To help ground the benefits, we're going to have a look at a case study of a fairly typical generic type of dashboard, a business performance dashboard. Here you can see there's the presentation layer and the meta information layer. And these are usually the two captures I'll make at the end of the wireframing process. I'll just take a photo of the presentation side and the meta side of the dashboards, and I will have multiple tabs for these. So there'll be several of these photographs that I'd have at the end of doing the wireframing. So that's the output. So a little bit of the background on the company this was for. It was a client of mine that I'd worked with, just calling it Generic Company Inc. because I don't have a particularly good imagination. And there's three primary problems that they had. So as with many companies, they had lots of different data sources. And there were some fairly large data sources. There was SAP, there was Oracle, there was SQL, and then there was a ton of different Excel sheets and some CSVs as well. So they needed to bring them all together into one single source of truth. That was the ultimate goal for this. Now, not only were the numbers off between the varying ports that they did have, people also didn't agree on the calculations for some of those metrics, particularly around net margin. So people couldn't even agree on that. So this is a perfect case for the process for the wireframe kit because it facilitates that discussion around this and to get people aligned. And so you can bring that stuff up and surface it during the wireframing process and not the development process. And also they couldn't get accurate metrics on profits and margins, which are obviously of vital importance to any business. So when we're looking at this, any engagement I do, we have to understand the cast of characters, who's involved. And I like to visually represent it in this way and just kind of mark off who's involved, and it gives me an overall sense of where the weak areas are and any political tensions that there might be. So anyone that's involved here, I've marked them off in blue. So we had business stakeholders, executives, and end users. They were one and the same. And so we had a bunch of stakeholders. I believe there was around 20, and they were fairly senior. There was executives up to the C-suite level, and they were all going to be end users. So you're thinking it's a business performance dashboard. So it sort of makes sense. It's fairly high level stuff. We want to see how our margins are doing, how's business. I was the consultant in the mix here, and then we had a BI developer involved, and felt it was important to have the BI developer in here so they could get a flavor of what's going on, what's happening behind the scenes. Why are we doing this? What's the objective? And any strategic decisions that were being made. So I like to have people involved as much as possible. The more, the better, I find. Although there is the risk of having the too many cooks in the kitchen, which you have to balance and you have to be able to navigate that. Now, there's a few things you notice are absent here. There is no IT manager. So the IT manager did exist in this organization. There was several, but they chose not to involve them. And this is just one of those real world examples where they didn't want the IT manager there because they didn't like him. And I'm only going to push back so far on things like that. If I think it's of vital importance, I'll make a case, but sometimes I won't be heard. And also, this is one of those times where I said, look, yeah, let's knock out version 1. We've got so much stuff we have to deal with here anyway. Just even deciding on an agreement between one of the calculations for certain metrics. That was going to be more important than having everyone I needed to have involved. So that was the thinking behind it. No data scientist, because there wasn't any model being built here. And the analyst didn't really need it. I think the stakeholders were really playing that role. So when I'm doing this, I like to have a sort of question or a statement that it's framed around. And this comes from the business stakeholders. This is how we're going to measure if we're successful at the end of building the dashboard, certainly at the end of the wireframe. In this case, we want to consolidate all our data, reports, spreadsheets, sales, and operational data to have a single source of truth on how our business is performing. It's a clear statement. They want a single source of truth. So anything that is not that will be quite obvious. I mentioned that there were basically 3 roles baked into one persona here. And that's what we have. We've got the executive, the business stakeholders, and the users all rolled into one persona. And you just think of a persona as a common group of people that are united by role, typically. And we're going to design for that role. So cast your mind back to the burger example at the start, where the data needs to be personal. That's how we go about it here. We have to understand it on a fairly narrow focus. Getting too broad, and it's hard for the information to be personal on the dashboard, to be relevant to the users. So some of the things you want to have here is a bit of a professional background, nothing too extensive, some of the key characteristics of their role, and then, more importantly, what goals do they have? In this example, they wanted accurate numbers for margins, improved data quality, amongst other things, reduce dependence on IT. Some of the challenges: do not know the state of the business. Right, that's important. And some typical metrics. Again, I include this because if we don't have them on version 1 of the dashboard, particularly with senior people involved, that's going to be the first thing that's going to be a red flag for them. One of the quotes, I like to get quotes when I'm interviewing people and building personas. The ability to access accurate and current information is vital to providing relevant insight I need for management committees. Now, this was an eye-opener for the BI developer that was involved, because she didn't know any of this. And all of this kind of executive level stuff was something she wasn't typically exposed to. So having the persona to look at was a very, very helpful thing. So she's able to get some sense of what was going on there and what their objectives were. And certainly the things that they currently look at, because it certainly feeds into the design of the solution. Looking at the presentation view of this, you can see we have a bunch of filters down the left. They're product, region, and customers. Along the top, we have our KPIs, just things you'd expect for a business performance dashboard. We have sales, we have profit, we have margin, net margin, and we have our top list of top 3 products. You can see in this one, I've used a open KPI chart that allows you to draw in anything. And this is obviously dependent on what you need to have in terms of technology. So we knew the technology we were building with, we could have KPIs where you could show like a top 3 like is presented here. And you can see that in our charts. We've written in the questions as the title for each chart. The first one here as an example: who are our highest value customers? And we've got sales and customer name as the X and Y axes there. So that's the presentation layer. This is the output of it. And the reverse of these cards, if you look at the filter here, the very, very first filter, the notes on it: show at least 5 products, scroll for more. Okay, so it's clear to the developer that you're not just showing the 5 products that are listed here, it's gonna be a scroll. So you're gonna show all of them. The next one is not applicable. And then the last filter, which is quite an interesting note to have: show customers sorted by sales. So it's not just going to be an alphabetical sort of the customers for that filter. They're going to be sorted by the volume of sales. On the KPI front, you can see the first one, under 5 million, is going to change color. And this references the different, it's going to reference all charts. All charts are impacted by this. Whereas the second KPI, it's going to change color when it goes under 1 million. And this references C4, which is going to be the bottom right chart, to understand what's going on. And this is the fundamental connection that you would have for storytelling, to connect the KPI to the chart and ultimately to the action and to the resolution. The next one, it's going to change color under 5%, and this references C2, which is the chart directly below that. And then the last one doesn't change color. It's kind of there more for information. And this is an example where, look, not everything has to be actionable. Not everything has to have a story behind it. It may just be handy for context to have it there, and certainly not the end of the world. So that's a overview of the case study for business performance, and you can sort of see what the output looks like.